Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am your host, Courtney Anderson. Today's show is part of our Joyful Art of Business series, and this is, of course, our series where we are focusing on the total person. We're asking if we're getting a return on investment, an ROI, in our professional endeavors where we have a positive emotional return. So when we look at the idea of being joyful, we're looking at the idea of having a positive feeling or reaction to our work. And I've just labeled work business. So it could be a business we own, it could be a business that we work for, it could be an employee, we could be a contractor. The idea is that there's an art. There's an art to what we're doing, and we're not just some sort of rote or mundane person. Where there's a joyful art. That we have a positive feeling. That's the joy. That there's an art. There's a creative, unique, original process to our business, which is whatever we're doing professionally. It could be pay. It could be volunteer. It doesn't matter. But that we're unique individuals, and that there's a emotional, positive return on our investment, and that we're artists. We're artistic. We're creative. We're unique, and we're doing things that are coming from the special. The special and unique talents and vision that we bring to everything that we do. So that's our Joyful Art of Business series. And our specific show episode today is, I'm getting by, but how do I get ahead? I am getting by, but how do I get ahead? So that's it. Today we're talking about the perspective of someone practicing the joyful art of business who says, you know what, it's working somewhat. I am getting by, but how do I get ahead? And so when we look at this topic, which I think is really interesting, and it ties into one of the core foundations of this show and all of the corporate education and training programs I do, and pretty much almost everything I write, and even how I teach and practice law, the whole idea of surpassing our goals. I think that there's a lot of content and a lot of resources that kind of help us, define our goals. How do we get to the point where we've, met our goals? My question is, how do we surpass them? Because if all I do is focus on the goal, then when I sort of do meet it, then what? I would like to be a lifelong practitioner and learner, so that it's not sort of, I climbed that mountain and now what do I do? It's sort of, how do I surpass that? And then once you surpass it, typically you're going to start seeing new goals. And, there's so many fantastic global examples of what I mean by this, but it's about trying to make ongoing healthy choices that support you holistically, so emotionally, psychologically, make sure your health physically, financially, and that you also understand that it's not something that you're ever going to stop doing. You're never going to get to a point in life, hopefully, as long as you have your faculties, where you aren't striving and yearning and dreaming and doing, because it's about, again, this entire approach to life is a tapestry. And what we're going to do is just within that sort of blank canvas, we're going to create something artistic and unique to who we are, to our journey, to our time, to our path, and it's going to give us, these positive returns. And so the idea of meeting your goal is part of life, but bigger than that is surpassing the goal. And some of the really easy examples I use for things like this are Oprah Winfrey, American businesswoman, who I think has done an excellent job of showing that just because maybe you reach a certain financial goal or you reach a certain goal with one project doesn't mean that you're done. I mean, she had the number one highest rated daytime show for many, many years. And then when she sort of closed that show, she didn't just go sit somewhere on a beach. She started new endeavors, new television channel, new productions, and it's about the next goal, the next mountain. And I cannot tell you how many people I've met who are really positive, and it's not an act. Like, they really feel pretty positive about themselves and their life, make pretty good overall healthy choices. None of us are perfect. We shouldn't strive to be. It's not attainable, and if we attain it, it's not sustainable. But sort of like, this is your journey, this is your time, this is your shot. What do you want out of it? And so this show is near and dear to everything that, you know, we do in all of our programs. And this idea of, I'm getting by, but how do I get ahead? And I think the first thing, again, is to do a definition check. What do we mean by getting by? And typically what I interpret, you know, the idea of I'm getting by means that, you know, I have a certain amount of resources, and I'm able to either hold on to them or sustain them for some period of time. So I'm getting by, right? So I have, the place I stay, if I'm paying for it, I'm able to, get by, and every month or week or whatever my requirements are for payment, I'm able to pay. So I'm getting by. If I'm working in a situation for pay at a job, I'm getting by. That I'm getting my payment like I'm supposed to, when I'm supposed to, and that's enough money for me to pay some of my living expenses, or most, or maybe all of my living expenses. But the bigger question is, how do I get ahead? And to me, what that means is that getting by is just sort of a bare minimum. Like it's a status quo. I've hit a level. I'm doing this. I'm here. But how do I get anything more than this? Right? How do I get ahead of this? And I think part of the definition check of what getting by means, that's part of it. I'm arguing it just sort of means that wherever I am, I'm here. And I'm trying to wonder how I can either stay here or how I can maybe get more than this. And when we look at getting ahead, the first thing I think is, get ahead of what? Sometimes people, focus on the financial aspects. I need to get ahead of my, payment due dates. I need to have the money to pay my bills before, that day it's due. Instead of, I waited to that day and I sort of kind of pulled it together, and then I got paid that day, and then as soon as the money hit my bank account, it left because I was trying to, pay these bills. So I'm getting by means I'm sustaining something, but I'm not getting ahead, and nothing's really changing. And to me, that's the core underlying issue about this show topic that's really fascinating. This idea, I've been to so many locations around the world. I used to travel 200, 300 days a year, just going everywhere. I'm going to different, conferences and corporations and governmental agencies. What was I doing? I was giving keynote presentations or motivational speeches, or I was doing corporate training and consulting. So I was just traveling, and I've been able to see many parts of the world, and I have many places I would want to see, and I haven't been at all. But this idea, I go to places and people say something to me, like, same stuff, different day, or they'll say something like, another day, another dollar. And basically what they're saying is, it's kind of like a repetitive exercise. So they get up, same stuff, right? Some people use a profanity instead of the word stuff, and just different day. So it just basically means like, hey, I went to bed, or, went to sleep, depending on if I work a day shift or mid shift or night shift, and I woke up at the same time, and I put on, a similar outfit or the same outfit, and I went to the same place, and I sat here for the same amount of time, and I did the same thing, and then I left at the same time, and then I went back and I slept again and ate and showered and whatever, and then I came right back and did the same thing. And it just goes on and on. It's like some sort of repetitive, like a little, gerbil or rat on a little wheel in its little cage. I'm just running in circles, and I'm not going anywhere differently. I'm just going to the same place. Now, it's not a negative thing necessarily, because the money I'm getting from this lifestyle gives me a place to go to, right? To take the shower and eat and sleep. So it's good. And we all want to be grateful to have a place to be able to lay our head and to stay. And if we have a really consistent place that's our place, whether apartment or home or condo or whatever, you can put your stuff there, your own closet or your own duffel bag or whatever, and having a little corner of the world that's yours is a big deal. And there are many, many people who don't have that. So we're not ungrateful for it. But how do we get off of this cycle of, there's nothing on the horizon? People sometimes are so fascinating because my perception and understanding is they feel trapped between two outcomes. One is total fear that it'll go away, right? They'll be fired, or the place will go out of business, and then they won't even have that place to go to do the same thing every day, to go back to their place and nap, because it'll go away, and if they don't have that money or that place to go, it'll throw off their routine that could jeopardize the whole rest of their life falling apart, right? So there's that fear of holding on to the little bit that you have that you're doing. And then there's this other fear of, is this all there is? Will I just do this for, years and decades and this is it? And sometimes when we look at getting ahead and different definitions for that, I think sometimes that's what people mean. How do I get further than this? How do I change up my horizon so there's something different other than just the same thing? But at the same time, how do I, not give in to the fear and the risk? That this might go away. And so even though it might not be, the most riveting experience on a daily basis, if I lost it, it would really be catastrophic, right? Because then I wouldn't even be able to pay for where I am. And so it's a high wire act. How do you get by and stay in a position where you get by, where people think that, you're doing your best, or that you actually are doing your best, and then how do you change your dynamics in your life so at some point something is different? Whether it's more opportunity or more adventure or a different shift or a different location or more money or just something. So that there's enough of a variety and a dynamism in your experience that it's not just, the same old every day. There's a really old commercial in the U.S., I'm sure in other parts of the planet. And I think you can see it on the internet. And it was like a donut store, a place that made those sweet donuts. And of course, donuts are one of my things I have to be aware of, because I love sugary bread. I just love any kind of sugary bread product. So I myself have to watch how many of the donuts I engage in. But the person would go, so it was a television commercial for a place that sells donuts, right? And so it had like a guy that like works at the donut place, and in the commercial, he's basically saying something like, they show him, like, time to make the donuts, and he's going to go make the donuts, and then they show him again, and time to make the donuts, and like, here he is, like, day after day, like, time to make the donuts, like, he's going to make the donuts again, same time, same place. And there's sort of that idea there, right? Like, you're getting by in that situation. You're grateful to get by. We talked about that. We so many programs we do about making sure that we're not calculating the things that we could potentially be joyful about in our lives, and calibrating how we view things so that we don't get caught up in negativity, or caught up in some of the horrible things that happen, and balancing out our lives with the things we're grateful for. So it's good to have a thing to do, and it's good to be able to get by. And so many people, of course, are unable to even get to that point. So we're grateful. But how do you change that up? How do you make it into potentially something different, in a couple of months or years or decades? Or do you just sort of do this? And at some point, there's so many great poems. I love reading poetry. That's where I talk about, and there's other, works of fiction and nonfiction that kind of, this whole idea that, what happens to a dream deferred, or what happens to a dream that, deferred so long it dies. So if I never ever get ahead, and then I'm 85 years old, and I'm, not able to work anymore, and that's all there was. And my argument would be that even if that's the situation somebody's in, I bet if you talk to a lot of people in that situation, there's a whole lot of things in life, maybe outside of work, that they did get ahead, with their family or their community, or, their, being active and being of service to other people. So usually when you talk to people, it might have been that maybe they did just do that one sort of work task for money, but there are other things, if you talk to them about, that brought them so much joy and pleasure and excitement and adventure, they did get ahead. So I do want to make sure, again, that we, 360-degree, look all the way around and make sure that when we are arguing with ourselves maybe about getting by versus getting ahead, like, are we looking at the totality of our lives? Because a lot of times people say, oh, I'm just getting by, but then you start talking to them and it's like, oh, but I have 2 kids and I've raised them, and, one's in university and, the other one's already, in their own family and a parent, and I'm proud of them. And it's like, you've gotten ahead, right? Like, maybe some of the work things didn't turn out exactly how you would have liked, but you used that. You used that work as a platform and a catapult to allow you to get ahead in all these other areas. And you talk to people sometimes and they start telling you about what their hobbies are and their interests, and it's amazing what they've done. So yeah, maybe there was some sort of part of their life that they felt they didn't get ahead in, but they used that part of their life to further their other interests and further their other areas of growth and fulfillment. So again, we must look at the whole lay of the land. We can't just sort of say, well, what about this? And then take for granted other parts of our lives that are going very well, where we feel like we're getting ahead. So when I look at the idea of getting by, again, I think it's important to ask yourself, are you okay with getting by? And as I just shared, there is absolutely, no right or wrong in getting by. If you're getting by allows you to have the ability to provide stability for yourself, safety for, you and any loved ones, then you've, since gotten ahead. And I'm going to share a pop culture story, and I'm going to repeat another. So recently I saw this movie that came out relatively recently in the U.S., The Butler, and it was a movie about a butler, somebody who waits on other people, a butler, and it was about a butler that had eventually ended up working in the United States at the executive office and residence where the President of the United States lives, in called the White House. So, and I'm mentioning all of this, of course, for all of our international community members and people around the world, and just as a refresher. So this movie, The Butler, is about somebody who's a butler. They wait on you, right? Like they bring you something to eat or water, and they just sort of are, sometimes they're known as like a servant or, wait staff or things like that, but a butler. So this gentleman was a butler, and he was an African-American, and he was born into a family in the southern part of the U.S. and sort of escaped some very negative work work conditions and living conditions, and moved up to the northern part of the United States and ended up becoming a butler at the White House and working for the presidents and of course other staff and senior leaders and world leaders that would come to this White House. And it was really interesting, and so of course it's fictionalized, but it's based on a true story. It's based on a true story of a person who really was a butler for many, many decades, and so got to work with all these different United States presidents and sort of, observed the changing of the nation and of the world in a lot of ways from this sort of unique vantage point as a butler. So in the movie, which is fictionalized, I'd mentioned her recently as a business person, but Oprah Winfrey also, we talked about, right, getting ahead, doing different things, changing things up, taking risks, went back and acted in a movie, which she hadn't done in a really long time, and was in the movie The Butler playing the butler's wife. And so I enjoyed the movie immensely. It was a very talented cast, but the point of what I'm trying to convey is this. So at one point in the movie, so the butler, and he marries, his character, his wife, when they're younger, and then they have, in the movie, they had 2 sons, and their sons are growing up or whatever, and then their older son goes to college, and the younger son eventually also grows up and goes to the military. So trying not to give away any spoilers, the older son had gone up and grown up, finished high school and gone to university, to college, and the butler, is very proud, and they had a great scene where the mother and father are sending off their oldest son to go to the university. So the younger son goes off to university. He has some social activism and changes where he doesn't exactly totally focus just on university, but anyway, long a couple down the road, the older son comes back home, and he's been a bit estranged from his parents because he wasn't necessarily doing what they expected him to do when they sent him off just to go to college. So he comes home to visit, and he has brought this woman who was never totally clear. He wasn't his wife, but I guess they were sort of in some sort of a relationship, or at least he thought they were. So he brings the younger woman home to visit his parents, who still live, of course, in this area of the U.S., very close to the White House, because the butler is still working at the White House and going there every day like he's done for decades, right, to do his job, take care of his family. So the father and the mother and the younger brother and the older brother's there with his we'll just call her girlfriend. They're sort of and the older brother had never brought this girlfriend before to meet his parents, and he hadn't seen them in a very long time, and they were somewhat estranged. So the older son and his girlfriend started to say some things that really upset the parents, and they also they sort of behave a little bit disrespectfully to the parents, and so there's a great scene when the mother, who's played by Oprah Winfrey, who's married obviously to the butler, says to to her oldest son, she sort of throws his girlfriend or whatever she was out of their home because she'd been really inappropriate in terms of her manners and behavior. And Oprah Winfrey's character, is speaking to the actor playing her older son, and she says something to him along the lines of, everything you've ever had, that butler paid for. And basically, the older son was in some ways, I think, uncomfortable with the fact of his father being a butler. His father didn't have, advanced education, and literally is a butler. It's what he does. He waits on people, at the White House, but he's still a wait person. And I think there was like a shame or some sort of, looking down on, I think, the parent. And so I thought that was an excellent scene where again, Oprah playing the mother, says, everything you've had, right? Like this home that they'd lived in, nice home that the father had, saved money and provided to send that oldest son to college where he never had opportunity to go to. And the mother's point is, maybe just a butler, right? At least, she didn't use exactly these words, but look what he did with this. Look how hard he worked and how well he provided for us. And there's a scene farther toward the end of the movie where they're, the butler's kind of retired, and he's much, very older gentleman, and his wife, Oprah's still playing, and they go out they're looking out, and sort of talking, and I don't, in their 70s or 80s at this point, and the wife says to the husband something like, "You've taken such good care of me all these years," and it made me sort of tear up. I'm tearing up now, and because what it was arguing, I think, is the point of you need to define what you're trying to accomplish. So even though someone's a butler, which might not be the highest status level, it's not royalty in a nation where you have royalty. It's not an executive or a big, powerful, rich business person in a nation like the U.S. You're a butler, but I'll tell you what, you can do amazing things. And I think, and I'm using a kind of an elaborate, not very well told example from this movie I recently saw to sort of show that, of course you can. And he worked very hard as a butler, and he provided for his family, and he took care of his children to the best of his ability, and he sent them to university, those who could, and he took care of his wife, and in this movie, in the scene, as they're older, she's saying, with real gratitude, you took such good care of me. And that's a powerful thing. And my argument is, did he get ahead? I'm going to say he did. Maybe in his job, he never became, he didn't go from butler to president, but he did get ahead. And you see that in there's millions of stories around you and I right now, no matter where you live in the world, of people who are getting ahead because you're providing opportunity for yourself and stability and for your family and your loved ones, and that's getting ahead. And I really just want to underscore that because I think sometimes people miss the point of it. There are other people who, we could talk of lots of examples of people who are very wealthy or wealthy and famous, and they are not able to provide. Maybe they succumb to some sort of, drug or alcohol addiction. Maybe they make horrible choices financially. Sometimes people are, neglectful or abusive. It's all about you making healthy, good choices today and tomorrow. Ideally, we would all like to be able to wake up every day and just our lives be a fantasy. I have never met anybody who has a life like that. And I've met people with incredibly impressive accomplishments and impressive financial resources, and still there's struggles. We all struggle in different ways at different times. The way to get ahead is to think ahead. And I think what I was trying to express, which I might not have done the best job of, but I hope I did, is that movie and sort of the underlying factual story and the story that's happening in your neighborhood and my neighborhood all around us is you are getting ahead by thinking ahead. And it might be I'm going to get ahead by I'm going to work this job, and this job might not be the most glamorous thing, the most exciting thing, but you know what? I'm good enough at it that they're going to keep me employed, and I'm going to, do the best I can, and it's going to allow me to provide for myself, for any family that I have or friends or people I care about, and that's getting ahead because you're thinking ahead. It might be that you take a job, use that as a stepping stone for yourself to go get other training or go to school or relocate to a different place. I mean, as long as you're thinking ahead, you're getting ahead. And I really encourage you, and I get so fired up sometimes, I think I overwhelm people, but this is just so important. If you are getting by, that is awesome. And that is something I want you to take the time to celebrate and to be really proud of. Because there are a lot of people that are not able to accomplish that for whatever reasons, and many people just self-sabotage. But you're doing it. Because getting by means I'm self-disciplined enough, I'm organized enough, that I'm making it happen. And there's some sense of stability. And that's a good, admirable, awesome thing, and I am very proud of you. As you think about your life, and if you are frustrated, then the way to get ahead is to think ahead and to plan ahead. And it might be planning ahead so that your grandkids have opportunities for other professional options, or for them to go to a great university. It might be for yourself to be able to save enough and leave the job that you're doing early enough and have made other sacrifices or financial investments so then you can do something different. But all you have to do is think ahead, which is free. You can do that anytime. And then you got to start planning ahead. And it might be just for yourself. It might be for yourself and other people. And as long as you are able to get by and to keep getting by, and you're thinking ahead and you're planning ahead, and you begin then to, after you think ahead, then you make the plan, right? The plan is how I'm going to get there. And then you have to execute. But with those three things, think ahead, plan ahead, and execute, then you are ahead. And as you get older in life, and even in my own little journey, I start to look around as years go past, and you see people who, you might have thought, wow, we're all just getting by. And then as you sort of look around at some point, you start to realize a lot of people aren't even getting by anymore. What happened to so-and-so? Oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. Oh, goodness. So never denigrate the accomplishment of getting by, because it takes a lot of self-discipline, and it takes a lot of good choices to do that. And then I'm going to ask you right now to start thinking ahead. What do you want? And then I want you to start planning ahead. Right? Just sort of jot, how's that going to happen? Am I going to save a little here, save a little there? Am I going to, a year out, start looking for other opportunities? Am I going to decide I'm going to apply to the Peace Corps? I mean, I don't care what it is, but you're going to start planning. That's just just getting the ideas down. So I'm thinking, and then I'm planning, and then I'm going to start executing. Now, this is ahead, so I'm not jumping up on Monday afternoon and, oh, my goodness, I'm going to leave and I have no money and I'm going to try to go to another part of the world with no plan. No, that's why we're thinking and planning. We execute little by little. So it might be applying to different opportunities. It might be looking at different options. It might be looking at your financial goals, and you saved $100 or you saved $50. That's more than most people. And it's not an exaggeration. Certainly in the world, and definitely if you're talking U.S. dollars. Even in the States. Be proud that you're getting by, because that is, again, a huge, huge accomplishment. And then you have to figure out, what do you mean by get ahead? And then you're going to continue. Think, plan, and execute. And it happens. It does happen. It doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing. You absolutely have gotten ahead because you planned. You thought, you planned, and you executed, and it happens. That's a done deal. I can't guarantee you how it's all going to play out, because life always throws its own curveball, but you will get ahead. You're going to have different things happen. because you made it happen. And that is something that I'm very, very, very proud and pleased that you took part in this program today. As always, you can come to CourtneyAnderson.com for more information. And again, thank you so much. Think, plan, and execute, and you are ahead.